God's foundation is in the holy mountain of Africa. The Lord loved the gates of Zion more than all the dwelling places of Jacob. Glorious things are spoken of thee, O city of God. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia, this man was born there. And of Zion it shall be said, this man and that sister was born in her, and the highest himself shall establish her. For the Lord shall count it when he come to write up the people in judgment, that this man was born in Ethiopia. Honorable Elder, Brother Makandal Daga, Chief Servant, and Sister Daga, Servant President, Brother Obika, elders, Pan-Africanists, dignitaries, sisters and brothers. On behalf of the Commission for Pan-African Affairs and the Pan-African community in Barbados, I bring you tonight greetings of love and solidarity and strength. It is a humbling experience, very humbling, to stand before such a gathering of such strength of spirit, beauty, and African dignity. And I thank you for your warm hospitality and family affection. It was with some trepidation that I observed that I was going to speak after the dinner. Because over the years, some people have compared a speech by Ikael Tafari to righteousness, only in the sense that many have hungered and thirsted afterward. And therefore, I was hoping that maybe we would have something to chew on apart from food for thought after I had finished. But I must say that it was an excellent meal. The cuisine was very special, and I appreciate such honor and such pleasure. I want to say that, as Brother Obika has indicated, it was 40 years ago, which you can work out what that means. It was 40 years ago, this October, that myself and other students at Mona marched downtown Kingston as young and somewhat naive middle-class students who thought that we were safe from the arms of the Jamaican police. However, when we got down into the middle of the city, we were greeted with glass bottle and stones, and the police unleashed the batons on us and tear gas, and just like some of those films you've seen in South Africa during the apartheid years, we found ourselves running through people's backyards, jumping over barbed wire fences, scuttling through pit toilets to escape Babylon. It was a very fiery baptism, and my first sociological lesson. Nothing that I learned on the campus thereafter quite matched that first lesson. It showed me the full face of the beast when he takes off his mask. And it was able to inspire me on the journey and to keep me intact and with my commitment as strong as ever to this day. I would like to say that over those years, from October 16, 1968 until now, I've delivered many speeches, spoken to many gatherings, delivered different messages. But the message that I have to deliver tonight is without doubt the most serious and the most crucial. because we stand today on the threshold of a final confrontation with the enemy of Africa. We've come to the crossroads, and I would say there are two paths that stand before us. At the end of those two paths are two destinies. One is collective liberation. The other is individual annihilation. And I wouldn't have to point out to you that unthinkable as the last course is, it would mean the extinction of the African race as we know it. The stakes are that high. And therefore, I would repeat before I get into the main part of my address, the words of the chief servant. At this historic stage of our civilization, the hope for change demands that every African male or female, wherever he or she may reside in the universe, must now make an undying commitment to the cause of African liberation. That is no joke. That is where we stand, and those are the stakes. Brother Obika has given you the background, and I think it is important for us to understand the words of the great Pan-Africanists who prepared the way for us. One of the greatest luminaries in the firmament of Africa was Kwame Nkrumah. And he it was who said, on the occasion of Ghana's independence in 1957, March, he said, Ghana's independence is meaningless unless all Africans are free. And before him, the great Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and before Garvey, Edmund Blyton and Martin Delany had said, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. Emperor Haile Selassie, on one occasion before the United Nations, observed that Africa awaits its creators. And by that he was referring to those in the diaspora who will return home to rebuild Africa. And finally, from our own womb in the Caribbean, Robert Nesta Marley, I'm sure you know, said, how good and how pleasant it would be before God and man to see the unification of all Africans. Africa, unite. And that is the message that will give us the victory. Africa, unite. Because the Pan-Africanists from the beginning, Marcus Garvey, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, Rusty McConnell, Walter Rodney, Amilcar Cabral, Malcolm X, all of the great Pan-Africanists, Kwame Ture, they all spoke of the vision of a free Africa, united and integrated with its diaspora. Because the overthrow of Africa was the cutting asunder of Africa, cutting Africa in half, shipping half of Africa into the West, into the belly of the beast, to build the industrial centers of Britain and France and Germany, while Africa was drained of its manpower and its woman power. African villages were destroyed. Africa wasted away. In the words of Walter Rodney, Europe underdeveloped Africa. So if the dividing of Africa asunder was the beginning of the rise of Europe, then the only way that Africa can regain its place and its pride of place in history is by bringing together again the sons and daughters of Africa in the West and uniting them with the sons and daughters at home on the continent. Once we do that, the full power will be restored. And towards that end, there were 7 major Pan-African congresses kept during the course of the 20th century, beginning in 1900 with a Trinidadian by the name of Henry Sylvester Williams, who kept the first Pan-African Congress in London at the start of the century. And from there, the movement developed and built up until the climax in 1945, the first climax in Manchester, when Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya, James and Padmore gathered together in London, in Manchester, and they declared that the time had come for African leaders to go home to their country and fight for political independence. And the word was, seek ye first the political kingdom. And then Nkrumah returned to Ghana, and by 1957, Ghana was independent. And Kenyatta returned to Kenya, and Kenya gained its independence. But that was still not enough. And then there came further voices like Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau and Walter Rodney, C.L.R. James, who spoke about the need to redistribute the income even within the African world so that the class barriers within the African world could be broken down. They spoke about socialist revolution right up until the 7th Pan-Africanist Congress in Uganda in 1994. And then, of course, as we all know, there was a major epochal dismantling of the Soviet Union. The international socialist bloc fell, and we were left with one superpower and a reunited colonial power, Britain and France resurgent. And since that time, we've witnessed many driving back of all of the gains that we'd made. But while these things were taking place, something was going on, something that our news media have not focused on. They focus a lot on Darfur, and they focus on the Sudan, and they focus on the problems going on in Somalia. They focus on the poverty in Zimbabwe. But they do not tell us that quietly, steadfastly, but surely, Africa was coming to a unity. On this very important African Liberation Day, the 25th of May, 1963, under the chairmanship of Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, 30 African heads of state came together and formed an African unity, an organization of African unity. And on that foundation, they were able to build such a strong unity that through the organization's OAU committee, they were able to liberate the last vestiges of colonial domination in Africa. They were able to set Zimbabwe free and Guinea-Bissau free and Namibia. All of these victories were the fruits of the unity of the Organization of African Unity. And on that foundation, in July 2002, a second floor was put in the African Building of Unity, a second floor called the African Union. And through the African Union, we now had in Africa one single policy-making body. And that body, in May 2003, it stretched out its hands to the people of Africa in the diaspora. And for the first time since the time of slavery, for the first time since those days, Africa at home stretched out its hands to the Africans in the diaspora. It's important to understand that this was because the people in the diaspora had made a major contribution to Africa's unity and power. Pan-Africanism, which is the voice of a united Africa, did not emerge out of the continent. It came out of the Caribbean, out of the diaspora. It came out of the crucible of those who had had everything taken away from them. It was the voice of Trinidadians like C.L.R. James and George Padmore. It was the voice of the great Marcus Garvey that raised the cry of a united Africa. You see, in the Caribbean, we didn't see Zimbabwe and Uganda and Ghana and Nigeria. We didn't see Ashanti and Zulu and Yoruba and Igbo. Because in the Caribbean, we were shorn of all those tribal cloaks. All that we saw, all that remained was Africa, the whole of Africa, Africa as one. And therefore, when we look at the struggle for African liberation, we see two forces. We see that in the diaspora, the voice has come repeatedly for a united Africa. That came out of the Caribbean, out of the United States. But at the same time, the spiritual center of African liberation is Africa itself, is the continent of Africa, the people at home. It is the source to which we have to return. It is the origin from which we all come. It is the foundation. And therefore, if we can bring together that center, Africa at home, with the strength of our people in the West, we will have the power to reunite and to bring about the African Renaissance and to overcome all enemies. And if you think these are just words, these visions of our great Pan-Africanists have come to a fulfillment. For in 2003, the African Union's foreign ministers came together, and under the Article 3 in their constitution, they invited the people of Africa in the diaspora to participate fully as the sixth region of Africa. So that now we have Africa West, Africa East, Africa North, Africa South, Africa Central, and most crucial, Africa in the diaspora. A very historic occasion, brothers and sisters. The most important day that Marcus Garvey dreamed to see, that all the prophets and patriarchs and matriarchs of the African struggle lived to see. And yet we are alive in this time to witness these things come to a fulfillment. But how many of our people are aware? How many of our political leaders? How many of our spiritual leaders? How many of our teachers? How many of our men of letters at the university? How many of our media houses are aware that we have entered a new chapter in African history and a new stage in the liberation of the African people? Because, you know, a victory that no one is aware of is not really a victory at all. A victory that you are not able to possess, that you're not able to claim, that you're not able to get the power from because you don't even know it exists. So we have to spread the word. We have a lot of work before us. This group of people, this congregation, this gathering, the brothers and sisters of the Caribbean Historical Society, the stalwarts of the NJAC movement, those who lit the fires in 1970, now have a very awesome responsibility. Because as we look across the landscape, the political landscape, we see they have no vision. They have no destination to take their people. So we the people, we the activists, we those who see the vision and who are committed to the cause have to take up the struggle to bring these words and this invitation by the African Union to a reality. The African Union has made it clear that as you have to begin somewhere, they want us to begin by selecting 20 representatives from among the Caribbean and the United States and South America to sit in their ECOSOC. Now, ECOSOC is the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council of the African Union. It is a major policy-making body of the African Union, and it is comprised of 150 members. We have 20. But the African Union has made it clear that this is just the beginning. They want to see the measure of our commitment. And if we are committed, they have made it plain, and they have stated it openly, that they wish to see the diaspora represented on the Scientific and Technical Council. They wish to see our representatives seated within the Pan-African Parliament, which has a major voice in the policy making in Africa and African affairs. They wish to see us as part of all of the different organs of Africa, the AU Commission and all of the other areas. They wish to see our participation. They are inviting us. They are stretching forth their hands, as the psalmist said. Ethiopia stretched forth her hand unto her people. And therefore, the ball is in our court. Since the time of this meeting, I would like to give you just a brief background, because the African Union handed over the responsibility for this process of integrating Africa and its diaspora to South Africa, the country which went through revolutionary struggle most recently among all the countries in Africa. And South Africa has kept a series of regional consultative conferences. Beginning in Jamaica in 2006, conferences have been kept in Barbados, in Paris, in London, in New York, in Brazil, and in Ethiopia, so that the diaspora has been consulted through its representatives on some major themes. And the themes that have been headlined are global dialogue, peace, and stability, knowledge sharing, women, youth, and vulnerable groups, economic cooperation, political cooperation, cultural cooperation, and regional development and integration between Africa and the diaspora. These are the themes that have guided the conferences, 7 of them kept right across the diaspora, so that Africa can listen to the voice of her people to hear where we want to go, where we want to take Africa. There can no longer be any excuse among our people who used to say that Africans on the continent don't like the Africans in the diaspora. They consider them the children of slaves. They don't consider them true Africans. All of this propaganda that was spread by imperial education to bring division between Africans at home and abroad has now come to naught. Africa has asserted its love and its interests and its willingness to share its affairs with the people of the diaspora. Africa has made itself clear. The question is now, what are we, the children of Africa in the diaspora, going to do about this invitation? There are a number of outstanding challenges, and I will just give you a hint of some of the challenges that we face. First of all, the question is, in what way will Africans, in which organs, and in what way will Africans in the diaspora be represented? How will they be represented? How can we ensure their level of efficiency? How can we ensure that they have the moral legitimacy to actually represent and build the African Union and protect the interests of the global African family? This idea of the 6th region of Africa, which has been such a strong platform to mobilize the representatives of the diaspora, needs to be examined more closely. How will the 5th region relate to the 6th region relate to the other 5 regions? How will it work? Will it be just symbolic? Will it be literal? How can we make it work? We need to determine the modalities of electing representatives. Already we see some jockeying for positions. We see some people in the diaspora already declaring that they are the ones who should sit in ECOSOC. But we need to have people who are the genuine representative of the people, the African people in the Caribbean. So there's much work to be done. We have to decide, in the midst of this turmoil, we have to decide how we can sit down together and plan with the people of Africa. There is a proposal for a joint commission between the African Union and CARICOM. A joint CARICOM-AU commission has been put on the agenda. The question is, however, what about the non-governmental representatives? Because as you know, CARICOM represents the government, but we also have very important Pan-African activists in the NGO movement. How will they be represented? How will this commission be funded? What kind of autonomy will it have? Will it have some autonomy from the AU and CARICOM? These are questions that we have to raise, and we have to ask, has there been any movement, any organization, any attempt to organize the diaspora to meet this challenge. I am throwing out the challenge now to the brothers and sisters of the Caribbean Historical Society that we need to come together across the region. We need to come forward with concrete plans to address this very important invitation from our brothers and sisters on the continent. I would say at this time, for all that we have done over the years and all the struggles, this moment that is before us is more important than everything that has gone before. We are coming to the close of an age. Those of you who study history will know that every 26,000 years we come to the close of a solar age. The world is now poised on the brink of the close of the solar age. The solar age closes in 2012. There have been 4 solar ages before in recorded history, recent recorded history, and they've all ended the same way, with cataclysmic environmental upheavals and the whole globe shaking. So when we look out on the future of our people, we see that this is a time of crisis like never before in human history. It may be looking at the time that these things are not real, because, you know, once in the scripture it was said, like a thief in the night. So these are things that are, but if you're watching keenly, you can see the signs of it coming in the tsunamis and the earthquakes and the terrible changes in weather. All of these signs are there to tell us that this is a time when African people have to come together and plan for their children and their grandchildren and for the future. Our Pan-Africanists struggled and sacrificed and have bequeathed to us a rich legacy and at this time a very impressive building of African unity, the African Union. When generations hence African people examine this period of history and reflect on this period that we are living in, when they see what actions we took or failed to take, what will be their verdict? Will they say that we rose to the occasion, that here at the turn of the 21st century there were some united, empowered, and courageous African brothers and sisters that came together to chart a path to cultural sovereignty and to independence and to true freedom and African brotherhood and sisterhood? Or will they say that we were found loitering on the premises of this magnificent edifice of African unity? What will be the verdict of history? It is up to us. We have to stand up, and we have to do this for our children's sake, for Africa's sake, and for the sake of humanity, because only Africa can redeem humanity. Only those who have suffered and gone down to the lowest depths of degradation and oppression have the moral right to claim the redemption of humanity. And therefore, all of these things are within our grasp. But we must begin patiently, methodically, systematically, to plan, to set up working committees, to set up commissions, to relate to those themes of global dialogue, peace and stability, knowledge sharing, regional integration, women and youth, all of those themes that are before us. We must build sustainable partnerships between Africa and its diaspora. We must come together and enhance the sovereignty of African people and the survival power of African people at this time. And only then can we say with a clear conscience before the Creator that we have done our part. It is well done. Brothers and sisters, one brother said, "Old pirates, yes, they rob us, sold us to the merchant ships, minutes after they took us from the bottomless pit. But our hands were made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. So won't you help me sing?" I literally mean, won't you help me sing? "These songs of freedom is all I ever had. redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourself from mental